Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Ask a Medical Student Application Edition webinar hosted by SNMA's Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students. My name is Teresa Dickerson. I'm a graduate student at Case Western Reserve University, and I serve as the Academic Affairs Co-Chair of the MAPS National Committee. I'm delighted to introduce my co-chair, Logan Dean. Logan, if you could turn your mic on so we can hear your great introduction.
Hi, I'm sorry. My name is Logan Dean, and I go to University at Buffalo in the graduate program. We're going to go ahead and start with our webinar series, Ask a Medical Student Application Edition. I have the luxury of introducing our panelists. First off, we have Sumari. Aldwin is a DO student at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine, otherwise known as PCOM, Georgia campus.
Hello, everyone.
Next, we have student Dr. Rahilia Tarafa joining us on the panel. Rahilia is a MD student at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Rahilia Tarafa.
Following, we have student Dr. Zakari Murphy. Zakari is an MD PhD student at Morehouse School of Medicine.
Hey, everyone. How are you?
Next, we have student Dr. Tori Owens. Tori is a DO student at PCOM main campus.
Hi, everybody. How are you guys doing?
Lastly, we have student Dr. Easy Umejego. Easy is a MD student at the University of Connecticut School of Medicine. Easy, you can say hi to everyone, all our viewers. I think you're still muted.
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Sorry.
Thank you. So thank you. First of all, thank you all for joining us today on this application series. Just a reminder to our viewers that today's webinar will be going over primaries and secondaries, and we will have a Q&A for the last 15 minutes of our webinar series today. So we're going to start and jump into questions about primaries. We have a couple of predetermined questions. The first question is, what do you think is the most important part of the application? And I'm going to ask Rahilia to start us off, please.
Okay, thanks for that. So basically the question's about the most important part of your primary application. I would say the biggest part is essentially being able to come up with themes, focus on things that you want the admissions committee to read, be able to be succinct, and make sure every aspect you bring up in your primary application can be tied in between your personal statement, your work and activities, and if you so choose to have a disadvantage essay, make sure that that's tied in together. So I can give an example. Say that you want admissions committee to think of you as someone who's very passionate about global health advocacy. You would want to make sure that every anecdote, any specific story you're telling about yourself that can be tied in the different paragraphs, you'd be able to tie that into how you talk about your different activities, and it essentially you should be able to tell a very succinct and unified story. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that insight. I do want to backtrack right quick and have each one of you introduce or give a short summary of your journey to medicine. Let's start with Aldwin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Aldwin. I'm originally from the Bronx, New York. I'm a fourth year at PCOM, Georgia, currently doing a research year, doing research in psychiatry at Harvard and Yale. A little bit about my journey to medical school. I applied to medical school 3 times. I actually looked at my old application and my Mcat scores. I actually scored in the I had a 17th percentile on my first time that I took the Mcat, on the old Mcat, and then eventually got a 502 on my third time taking the Mcat. So I just want you guys to realize that your dreams are everything, and continue to believe in yourself, believe in your passion to become a medical doctor or a doctor of osteopathic medicine, and it shall carry you forth into the success that you can ever achieve. So that's a little bit about myself. Thank you for having me on this, and I look forward to connecting to all the students here, and I'm definitely interested in being a mentor for each and every one of you. So reach out to me and check me out.
Thank you so much. Rahelia, would you mind going next, please?
Okay, hi again, everyone. So I'm currently a medical student at the University of Pittsburgh School of Medicine. I have completed my third year, and I'm currently in a research lab. I took a year off to carry out basic science research, neuroscience research in a lab here at Pittsburgh. Before coming to med school, I actually had a pretty circuitous route. I was pre-med in undergrad, and then in undergrad, just fell passionately in love with research and pursued a PhD in neuroscience afterwards. And it was in the middle of working on my dissertation that I realized I was still passionate about wanting to be able to translate my findings directly to the clinical realm. And hence I pursued research afterwards. And I can't get enough of research, so I'm back on a research year. So if you have any questions about grad school versus med school, completing an MD PhD program, or just want to learn about the whole med school process, need guidance on the application, feel free to reach out to me. My very good colleague on here, Ezzy, and I have been working with med students pre-med students over the past couple of years, and would be willing to offer help.
Thank you so much. Zakari?
Hey again, everyone. My name is Zakari Murphy. I am an MD, PhD, MSTP student. I'm currently in my fourth year, so I completed 2 years of medical school, 1 year of the PhD. I study in the area of neuroscience with Morehouse School of Medicine, who's partnered with University of Washington, which I'm currently at. In order for me to get into medical school, I applied once, was rejected, reapplied after doing a 1 year master's, then got in. And then after my first year of medical school, I kind of realized I wanted to have a whole complete story as the true underlying cause behind diseases and what led to them. So they actually persuaded me to pursue the PhD, as well as I enrolled in our school's MD PhD joint program. And kind of on a way other people reiterate, you're not going to know your journey or know what you fully want at first. And that's fully okay. This part of this is what you're going through, is to understand and reveal to yourself over time what you're passionate about, what you like, what you can live without, what you can't, and then it's just a part of embracing it and moving forward. So feel free to ask me any questions about that, how I found my path, or any things that you're passionate about, or career changes and so forth. Look forward to talking to you.
Thank you, Zakari. Tori?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tori Owens. I don't know who else is a career changer, but I'm definitely a career changer. I was Rahara, I'm sorry if I'm saying that wrong. I also was in research at first. So I did my master's degree at Delaware State University. And then from there, I went on to the field of pediatric oncology research for several years. And in between there, I also did a Post-Bac program at Drexel University College of Medicine. And all of this is a journey. None of it is linear. It's always kind of okay, here going up and then down and stuff like that. So for me, it was really about realizing research wasn't for me, and then realizing medicine was, because I wanted to be in front of patients and I wanted to work with patients. So I continued to pursue medicine throughout my research career, and that led me to going to Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine. I'll try to keep it short. If you guys have any questions for me, right now I'm in a research year, so in between third and fourth year, like Rahila and some others like Aldwin, I decided to do a research year, mostly because I wanted to garner more support. COVID has been crazy, and I didn't feel super comfortable going into the application process for residency right now. So I'm pursuing surgical oncology research, and I have hopes to be a surgeon in the future. So if you guys, I look forward to exchanging with you guys, and I did put my information down there for you guys to contact me as well.
Thank you so much. And lastly, Easy.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you guys can hear me. So like most of my colleagues on the panel have mentioned, I also didn't take a straight path to medical school. I graduated with a biology degree from Kennesaw State University in Georgia, and spent about 3 years at the NIH doing research before pursuing medicine. I mean, one of the things you would have heard is most of us had a background in research, but that doesn't mean that your background should be also in research. Pursue your passion before you apply to medical school, and even while you're in medical school, you can still pursue your passion. So I'm always available to help and mentor other students. So feel free to reach out if you need help.
Thank you all for sharing about your journey with us. We're going to move back into our primary application questions. First of all, did anybody want to add on to the first one? The first question about what do you think is the most important part of the application?
Can I say something?
Definitely.
Yes, Tori, go ahead.
Oh, Tori, go ahead. Sorry.
So Rahila definitely focused on this, but I would say the most important part is trying to set yourself apart from others, meaning that, yes, everyone knows that we've done our undergraduate degree, we've created, we've done our requirements. That's what it takes to get to the point in time where you're applying for medical school. But meaning that if you have any stories that are unique to yourself, regardless of if they were related to medicine, those are the kind of things that I would display in your medical school application. And we'll get more into this as time goes by, but especially in your secondary, do not harp on things that are already in your application. Set yourself apart, make yourself unique. I worked at Bath & Body Works for like 7 years prior to working at, applying to medical school as one of my second jobs. And I talked about making connections with people in the store, helping me be able to make connections with patients in the future. And that's what I wrote about in my personal statement. So whatever is personal to you, I would say, make that let you stand out in your application. Do not do the cookie cutter thing and continue to repeat things that are already widely available in your application, because that's just redundant and it doesn't allow the admissions officer to see you as an individual who is above and beyond whatever they're looking for. So that's, yeah.
Ezzy, you can go ahead and add on.
Okay. So what I would say is quite different from what my colleagues have said, but it also collaborates, it supports what they've already said. But what I would say is that there's no aspect of your application that's more important than the other. As a whole, all aspects of your application are very important, which is why everyone you speak to will tell you apply to medical school when you are ready. And that just doesn't mean when you have the stats, because as you all know, most schools will cut, will cut the screening based on the stats, the GPA and the Mcat. But you have to make sure that your application is as thorough and puts you in the best light possible. And so in as much as you might have the stats, you have to make sure that your application is as strong and sells you in the best light that's possible, because most schools only have one opportunity to look at your application. And if they can put it aside to invite you for an interview, then you've lost that chance.
So speaking of application and standing out and being yourself and paying attention to all components of it, a lot of students have struggled to balance the application and their responsibilities during this time in the middle, of the pandemic. So what do you all suggest for students who are still working towards applying to the 2020-2021 application cycle in terms of in the middle of the pandemic? What advice do you have for them? And we can start with Zakari.
Yeah. So this is kind of hard because it's new territory for everybody. No one has gone through this in a sense And then there's a bunch of reiteration talk about some people saying, oh, we should probably like hold your application off a year or two or take a glide year or a gap year. And ultimately, it's kind of up to you individually what you're comfortable with. If you think you're confident or you think you have everything you need now, or very well have the connections, pretty much go ahead. I would say go ahead and go through, as well as like follow up with each institution because some of them are handling completely differently. For instance, some are doing only purely virtual interviewing. Some are not accepting the Mcat, or they'll accept the Mcat, but it's not really held at that big a hold. So it's like, you really need to do your research and background before you start adding schools to your list of ones you want to apply to if you do choose to go through this year. And also with those, just on a larger tangent, like the idea of balancing with working, staying at home, and with friends and family, that also is kind of like a thing that counts with your perseverance, understanding who you are as a part. And I would actually even acknowledge that and add that to some of your secondaries that might be coming up as like things that you're going through, understanding like what you're learning about yourself, as well as like that plays a role in your journey, because it is speaking volumes about your work ethic, attitude, as well as like getting them an overall picture of like what's affecting you this cycle, and being full disclosure and transparent about that when they start taking into considerations and admissions.
Would anyone else like to add on?
Yeah, I would like to add on a little. I would say that despite, in terms of being able to balance things, regardless of if we're in a pandemic or not, just in terms of how you approach your whole application, I like to tell people to treat it like a part-time to full-time job. You have to set aside time every day, if not every day, certain days of the week that you're just going hard on your application. And that may mean several rewrites. That may mean having multiple people read it to you and sending it back to you so that you can edit it over and over again. You really need to look at this as an investment in your future, because we all know about the returns after years and years of training, right? So in order to get that return, you really need to give it your all at this point in time. And if that means saying no to going out with friends, I mean, thankfully we're in a pandemic, so you can't really go out with your friends. But if that means saying no to certain things in your life so that you can say yes to this brief period of time that you need to invest everything in your application, then do it.
Thank you. So one of the biggest aspects of the application for pre-medical students is the Mcat. And with everything that's going on with the Mcat, some students are still waiting to take their Mcat before they hit submit on their application. Do you guys advise against that or for it? Let's start with Tori, because you're shaking your head.
I mean, regardless of COVID or not, you always should submit your application regardless of if you have your score or not. Like, you have to submit your application early as possible to get yourself just considered and like in there, because it takes AMCAS or AACOMAS, wherever you're applying, whether it be to allopathic or osteopathic schools, like a long time. And if you can imagine with COVID, it's probably taking even longer because their staffing might be limited. But certainly they understand like what's happening. Please submit your application and then wait for your MCAT score to roll in and then submit that later, because that's just my biggest advice. I see there are some questions in the comments. I don't know if we're addressing those or not.
So the questions in the comments we will reserve for the last 15 minutes of our webinar. And I do want to remind all of our viewers to please ask questions in the chat box. And again, we will address them the last 15 minutes of the webinar. So we're going to go ahead and move on to secondaries, which I believe a number of students are tackling now. So the first question that we have is the secondary prompt around COVID. So due to the effects of the pandemic, many medical schools are including COVID-related prompts in their secondaries. One example is briefly explain any adverse effects COVID-19 has had on you in terms of preparation for medical school interviews, finances, or health. How would you all suggest to address this question in a constructive manner? Let's start with Aldwin.
I would say for that question, dig deep down inside and think about your response, of course, but also be very realistic with your situation. many medical schools understand that it's a very challenging time for you as an individual, but for families, for your community, for the people that support you. And so I think that you have to have a level of transparency in regards to that. And there's nothing wrong with admitting you might have some difficulties with paying for medical school. You might have some challenges with, for instance, family members suffering from COVID. And I think medical schools can resonate with that because you're going into medicine, of course. And so I would say, I would implore you to really take time and dig through as well the schools and their emphasis on their mission. For instance, my school, the mission is to increase the number of representatives as physicians in Georgia as a whole. And so also interpreting that and incorporating that with your response. So some schools are emphasizing research, other schools emphasize community engagement. And so be aware of that and integrate that into how you want the schools to perceive of you as a applicant to their medical school. So that's what I would say.
Izzy, would you mind adding on to this question as well?
Was that for me?
Yes, please.
All right. Yeah, sure. I could do that. So I think the COVID question is no different from the adversity and the diversity questions that have always been on the secondaries. Like my colleague Rahila mentioned earlier, we work together, we collaborate together to work with pre-med students who are applying to medical schools. And we've been doing this over the years, and we've been succeeding with our strategy. I think one of the things that we always emphasize is you need to share your story by showing, not telling, right? The admission committee members will connect to your story more if you can show them. If you can show them what you did, rather than tell them, "Oh, I helped someone the other day," right? Show what did you do to help that person, right? That's the story, right? And you need to be specific enough. Do not generalize, because I could watch a movie and decide that, I understand what medicine looks like. But for you who experienced COVID, or who experienced the adverse effect of COVID, or the adverse effect in your community, you should be specific enough by sharing what you experienced. Be personable, focus on yourself, not on others. Like, you're the one applying to medical school, so you're the one applying to that school. So you should focus mainly on yourself, and also focus on your strengths. And if you have to be vulnerable, it's okay to be vulnerable. There's no problem with being vulnerable, but always bring it back and end it on a positive note. It's important for you to showcase your weaknesses and your failures, but also bring it back, end it back on a positive note and show how that experience has made you a better student, or will make you an even better physician. And we always say you should focus on your stories, pivot your stories back to the specific school, right? Each school, like Avery mentioned earlier, like each school have their mission and vision. You're not going to that school to change the school. The school will train you to be the physician that they train students to be. So you should focus on you should pivot your stories or your write-up back to the school, right? And emphasize what you're going to bring to that school and how you're going to contribute to the diversity and to the community, to the student community in that school that you're applying to.
Thank you both. So you both touched on the mission of the school, and that leads me to another common question that's asked during or on the secondaries is why this school? Why did you pick this school? So how would you suggest pre-medical students to address that question? And are there certain topics or aspects that we should bring up when addressing that question? And I would like to direct this question to Rahilya.
Okay, thanks, Logan. So for why is the school, I like to tell people to, that famous saying, to thine own self be true. So you need to understand yourself and know yourself and know both your short-term goals and your long-term goals. So I can use myself as an example. I have always been someone who wanted to go into academic medicine. I always knew, even though I went to grad school, knew I wanted to end up in academia at some point. And with that in mind, in picking a med school, I knew I wanted to go to research-oriented medical schools. And so when I was looking at different schools, places that had either opportunities for research in the curriculum or research years were things that I pretty much would place at the top of like my top tier schools, places I wanted to go to. And so what that meant was me spending time combing through the school's website, also combing through MSAR. And so I'm sure everyone is I'm aware of MSAR, going through and making sure that the things I was going to write about and the things that were attractive in the school and what my long-term goals are aligned well. And that was literally how I would approach my secondary applications. I always made sure I looked at the mission and vision and also tailored my answers, not only showcasing my goals, but also how I would fit into their school, keeping their mission in mind.
Thank you. Zakari, would you mind adding on to this question?
Sure. Going on pretty much that change, she covered that extremely well. It's understanding like you have to do a little bit of background research on yourself, like either through reaching out and talking to some of the students at that school that you might be interested in to know some of the sort of nuances or things that really make that school truly unique or surround the culture and environment. Because of course you can always go on a website and look at their mission statements. These are values, this are stand for, but you kind of have to do more of a deeper dive, like look at their individual programs. What hospitals are they involved in? What other schools do they collab with? What communities do they purposely have programming with? And like this is the type of things that you can mention, especially in your secondaries, that make you stand out, stand apart. Like it's one thing to say, oh, I love to go to school. It's a great school. It's an amazing school for this, that, and the third. But you're actually able to illustrate it, show some degree of understanding as well as your purpose. And what one of my colleagues said is identify how you can actually fit into that culture. And not only add to the fact of like what you can add to that school, what you can add to that sense of diversity in the student body, but also how could this school help you grow and develop? And kind of like this is where that vulnerability thing, like you could say, I'm not the best student at researching, but I understand that this school has an amazing research program or research initiative, especially getting more people from this certain type of demographic in there. And then you could disclose like this is something that I know I could grow from, prosper, learn, and use those translatable skills moving forward. Even if you don't necessarily say like, oh, I don't have any research, this isn't a good school, it still could be a great school for you to learn and grow as long as it's in line with your future career goals, as well as something that you are passionate about developing from. Now, with that said, we talk about this all the time. Don't try to force a square into a peg hole. If I know sometimes the desperation of getting to any medical school is a huge push and rush, but sometimes you can actually force yourself to go to school that's not the best for you. Because, for instance, if you're going far away from home, you might want a school with a more nurturing, hands-on environment or smaller class size. Whereas, like, you're good at independent or stuff like that, you might want to go to a school that's like that exemplifies individualization, then prospering, and then having individual students work independently. It's all these certain things that, of course, you're not going to know at the straight back, but I will advise doing that first deep dive. At least look at the class website, look at what their things they do, programs they do, and then reach out to the students after that, and then make your decisions for that. And of course, adjust this when you're applying.
Go ahead, Tori.
Sorry, the reason why I really wanted, and thank you, Zakari, those were great points, and Rahilia before that. So the school aims, of course, they're super important. Also considering DO versus, not versus, I hate to use the word versus, but DO or MD, meaning allopathic or osteopathic schools, private versus public. This is extremely important. So when you're talking about reasons why you want to apply to that school specifically, for instance, with private schools, it's going to be a little bit more open. They're not really looking at the state, or if you're from that state, or if you have any ties to that university, and so on and so forth. But with public schools, they're definitely looking for that tie. So if you are applying to a public school, you definitely want to make sure you make that connection. You know, if someone graduated in your family before that, or if you have some tie to the state or something like that, those schools specifically want to I guess, retain people that they train. So that's specifically one thing that you want to keep an eye on as you apply to these schools, number one with primaries, and then again with secondaries, because it can become extremely expensive. I even went as far as to look at, I mean, I'm sure my colleagues did as well, to look at their diversity. Obviously, there are only a certain amount of minorities applying, but you still want to see how many are they admitting, who's applying, and then go from there, because you want to see, like, are they actually championing diversity based on who's applying, or are they kind of trying to, I guess, fake the funk and say that they have diversity, but really they're not living up to that standard, because you want to feel supported in your medical education. And as Zakari said, you definitely, I mean, it's like it might be a last ditch effort, or you really just want to get into med school. It doesn't matter where you're going. You still want to feel supported. You still, like, that's going to be one of the toughest, at that point in time, part of your life. So you definitely want to make sure that you're going somewhere where you're going to feel supported. And then also one thing I looked at it was what programs and what specialties people were going into. So meaning where did people go, for their residencies? How did they fare and things like that? So all of those lists are available to people. Like for instance, PCOM makes its lists available, what specialties everybody got into the prior year or the prior 2 years, even going back as far as 3 years, what specialties they went into, what institutions they went to. So that's something, again, that really everyone touched on as well. It's like, what are you actually interested in? Is that school successful at matriculating people into programs and things like that are actually going to nurture your interests? So it's something also to keep in mind.
Thank you, Tori. Oh, Aldwin, you want to add on?
Yeah, speaking to that a little bit as well, to what Tori was saying, I think it's also important not to just look at the name of the school too. A lot of people, they look, oh, I'm going to be at this, top tiered program and whatnot. But it's also about if the program actually fits with what you want to do and engenders your ideations and your thoughts about practicing medicine. I think we should also think about the fact that you got to look at the mission statement, but you also have to reach out to the students at that particular institution that you're interested in. Ask them questions about, are there diversity initiatives? Are there support for mental health resources? Or is there a good interaction between the students and professors on campus? I think most pre-meds, I didn't take that initiative, but I think most pre-meds need to ask these hard questions before they actually apply to these specific medical schools. Because then I know a lot of my colleagues that are in specific schools, and they're like, yeah, my school's not doing nothing for us. We're not, feeling supported. We're not feeling encouraged. And I thought that I'll be in a good situation, but I didn't engender the idea that this was much worse than I thought. So it's about really reaching out and being proactive with the process and connecting with the students, because you're going to be a student there and you want to know what the real life experience is. So try to be very transparent about your questions and connecting with that thought process.
And Tori, I want to go back to you, and Aldwin, you also can chime in on this as well, because you brought up when you're searching for schools, make sure that you're looking private, public, NDO, MD. So since you all attend osteopathic schools, would you mind mentioning or talking about the application process for that versus, well, sorry, I also don't like these versus, but in comparison to the AAMC's application process?
So actually, the process is not different at all. It's just two different application portals. Having gone through both, I also, can't remember how many times Aldwin said he applied, but I applied twice. And the first time I applied both MD and DO. And the second time around, I was more pointed and I only applied for DO schools. So I've had experience with both portals, and it's pretty much the same. It's put in all this information that they need and submit that, pay a large fee, and then then submit to specific schools and wait for secondaries to roll through if they're going to come, and then subsequently submit those and submit. So it's really, the application process is not that much different. When it came to my thought process and applying the second time around, well, that's really specific to myself. I don't want to take up too much time, but essentially I felt more accepted in terms of, I'm a little bit older than probably most of my colleagues here. I'm 32. Like I said, I was a career changer. I was in research for many years, and I did a post-bac program. I had did 2 master's degrees before coming back, and deciding to go to medical school. So I just felt that the DO schools were more accepting of my kind of, as Rahila said, my circuitous route, and more willing to listen to my story rather than just look at stats. And really, that's what I was looking for concerning medical schools, and the open approach to looking at the person as a whole person and not just a set of symptoms. And I'm not, again, saying anything versus or contradictory about allopathic schools, but that's just the approach that DOs take. And I really resonated with that. So that's why I chose to apply for osteopathic schools.
Yeah, just reiterating what Tori said, it's pretty much the same, even down to the personal statement. I think you have 5,300 characters that you can have on the personal statement. So the process is much similar than it was when I applied, because I think for DO schools, when I was applying, there was like a discrepancy between the Mcats and the amount of characters you could have in your personal statement. So I think in regards to the application, make sure you note down every specific experience that allows you to connect with medicine, whether that's doing research or you did a talk or you did shadowing. Just take time to take that initiative and write down like, hey, this is the comprehensive experience that I've had and I've encountered within the field of medicine, and how it can actually make you very individualistic as an applicant.
And would you all say that the osteopathic medical school still emphasize shadowing a DO physician over MD when applying?
Yeah, most definitely.
Yeah, I definitely would say yes. Luckily, sorry for the noise. New York City is, I don't know. Sorry about that, but anyway. So, I would say in terms of osteopathic medicine, like when I was applying, like I actually worked at a DO residency, ER as a scribe, and so I shadowed in a way and worked with DOs a lot of times. But I would say like in terms of getting opportunities to shadow DOs, you should certainly reach out, be proactive with this process. Just go on Google, type in DOs in my area, and you could either, what I would do is sometimes I would actually go to their offices, or as well as contact their emails or the people that were at the front desk and let them know that I'm trying to shadow. And nowadays, of course, with COVID, it's a little bit difficult, but I would say that there's a lot of shadowing opportunities virtually. A lot of telemedicine is going on in various fields in medicine. And so that's still relevant to being considered an actual shadowing opportunity. So I would implore every one of the pre-meds on here to certainly reach out to whatever DOs are available in their area and try and connect with them.
Sorry, did you want to add on before we move on?
Just quickly. Yeah, it's definitely still important. And I'd say more so for the old school DOs, because as you know, or I don't know if our audience knows, but we're really, merging towards a more, physician-centric model. So recently, I think this past year, 2020, is when both AMCAS and ACOMAS, which are the two allopathic and osteopathic, homes, merged, such that there's no more, there used to be separate residency applications for both, but now it's just one joint process. So I think in the future, and even it might apply to you guys in the future, it's really not, I think that we're really moving towards a movement where we're not talking about the two entities separately, and we're just talking about physicians. And as DOs, we really the only thing that's different in the education is that we do osteopathic manipulative medicine, and we have education in that. And besides that, everything else is pretty much the same. So yeah, that's all I had to say.
I have one more point as well to reiterate that. I oftentimes come across students that say, oh, DOs can't go into competitive specialties, and that's not true. There's a DO neurosurgeon at the hospital that I worked at. I know a DO radiation oncologist. There's a DO that I know that does aerospace medicine. And so I think that coming as an osteopathic medical student, you have to realize like it's up to you as an individual to be competitive. It doesn't matter about whether you're DO or MD. It matters what you want to accomplish, your passion and drive for the mission of what you're trying to be successful at. So just remember that it's important to highlight it's you as a person that can be very successful in whatever field you choose to do, and you can accomplish the dreams that you have for yourself.
Thank you all for explaining the process and the similarities between applying and the important parts of applying for osteopathic medical schools. So we're going to now transition into our Q&A. And the first question we have comes from James. And the question reads as it states on the screen: what is the best strategy to go about tackling multiple secondaries simultaneously? And let's start with Zakari.
Okay. And with this, it kind of comes down to organization, which is something that I had to learn really fast. One of my friends actually, when she was applying, she had an Excel sheet to like list like, these are all the secondaries, this is how many letters of rec each one requires, this is the absolute deadline for early or late, or it could be considered late when she got it and when she wants to turn it in. A general rule of thumb I like to say is like, anytime you get a secondary, have it back within 10 days at the max, preferably within a week. That allows you to have time to look over it, make sure that you put out there the narrative and story you want to tell, but also have people able to check it, but still be able to get back in a timely time frame so you could be next in line when they apply. Because if someone actually does give you a secondary, it means that they like you to a certain degree and they're interested. Pretty much your foot is in the door at this point. This is your opportunity to kind of get within it and display more about your personality, who you are as an individual. And it gives you time to truly kind of expand upon and illustrate some of the things that you only got a little bit of time to mention in the primary. And I hate to get off topic, but this is something that I do want to reiterate or put in the point. So a very underestimated part of the primary is your activity section. That is not meant to be just a CV list off, oh, I did this, this, and that. The more importantly, today is like list what you did, but what you actually learned from it and how it helped you grow as a person and how you help to utilize these skills in the future. And then because oftentimes they'll pull from that, and then in your secondary is your opportunity to explain even more on that before you get to the interview. Because anything you put in the primary, secondary, be fully expected to ask about it when it comes time to interview. But with secondaries, main points, timely response, we get it back within 10 weeks. Don't get them mixed up. That could be really easy, really fast. So focus on one at a time. Don't be trying to jump back and forth between two. And that's why you set yourself a timeline and schedule. Like, I want to do this secondary this day, this one this day, this one this day, and this one that day. And then it's like always keep a center, know when you sent it in so you know, okay, when's the right time to follow back to see, oh, it's been a while since I heard back. Do you think they're giving out interviews now or what so? So just always keep that in mind and always keep kind of that fluid timeline in sync.
Okay, Tori, you can go ahead and add on.
Just really quick, Zakari, those were all great points. One thing I wanted to add is that you can do legwork even before you submit your the secondary applications, or excuse me, before you submit your primary applications. There are websites, I remember, I don't know if it's the same now, but Student Doctor Network was super helpful for me. They had a lot of the secondary application questions, you know, year by year, already up and available. So if you were expecting that you might get a secondary from that based on, you know, your preliminary screenings and everything like that, then you can already start prepping. So that's one way, in addition to having, you know, Excel sheet and staying super organized, which is very important in managing your time. Also do that legwork prior and beforehand. So that's one way that I stayed ahead of the game when it came to secondaries.
Okay, thank you all. So we have another question from Malate. What Mcat resources did you find most helpful? And let's go to Rahila.
Okay, thanks, Logan. So for Mcat resources, I think there are different ways to tackle it. You should kind of know ahead of time what your struggles are, whether you tend to be someone who's not really a good test taker, does memory tend to be a problem, that is retaining content. Do you need to like go over the content if it's been a few years since you went over those courses? And I think depending on the problems you have, you want to either take a prep course or study on your own. And in that regard, I would say that I don't think there's one MCAT resource that is superior to the other. All these test prep companies cover the same things. I would say just to make sure that the resource you pick is covering everything, make sure you go to the AAMC website and download the MCAT. There's actually an MCAT, the syllabus that covers everything, all the topics that would be on the MCAT. And then you want to make sure you're covering everything. If you find yourself struggling with content retention, I like to tell people to make use of Anki. You can simply go on YouTube and Google how to use Anki. Let's just search, how do I learn how to use Anki? And there are pre-made decks on MedReddit for pre-med Reddit rather, that you can kind of like go over the content. And then one of the things that tends to be most challenging for a lot of people is the cars section. Unfortunately, that's something that takes a lifetime to build. You want to make sure you're someone who reads a lot, either listen to a lot of educational podcasts, like I'll do a quick plug-in for This American Life, and just make sure you're always engaging your analytical and critical thinking aspects of your brain so that you're going to be well prepared and versed for the MCAT. And I like to say that the exam crackers cars is very good for drills. And then everything else for the science section, the psych soc, I would say just whatever resource you pick, just stick to it, make sure you know it back to cover, and make sure you do a lot of practice tests and drills.
All right, thank you so much.
I got a quick point on that. Just real talk. Like in terms of the MCAT, I want everybody that's listening, real talk. Do not have that self-defeatist attitude and say, I cannot do well in these exams. Y'all could kill it. Y'all could conquer this exam. You have every opportunity to do so. So believe in yourself from day one. I don't want to hear none of that. I hear all the time pre-med saying, oh yeah, I'm bad at taking these tests. Nah, cut it out. You're going to kill this exam. Go in there with confidence from day one, saying, hey, this is the goal that I have for myself, and this is what I'm going to set forth for my future, and I'm going to commit to this. I will be a doctor. I will be a physician. And starting from today, right now, I have all the power to do so. And your mind is so incredible. So remember that. I just want to say that real quick. And in terms of MCAT resources, I say do a lot of questions. Questions. You can't do well on the MCAT if you can't think like the test maker. Think like the test maker, and you can conquer the exam without a doubt.
Thank you for the words of encouragement, Aldwin. So the next question is from Daya. Do you recommend taking an MCAT course or paying for a tutor, or is self-studying more beneficial? And we can go to easy for this one.
I think I'll just piggyback at what Rahila said earlier. I think this is this question applies to each individual, and it's only you that knows what works for you best. You know how you've learned and studied in the past and how you succeeded in your academics in the past. And so you have to dig deep and figure out, do you need a structured program to keep you accountable? Are you able to study on your own and have friends and family members to keep you accountable? Or, what is it? Do you have the finances actually to even take those courses? Or are you in a program that's able to provide for you those courses? So there's a lot of things that go into deciding whether you take the course, you get a tutor or take a standardized course or just study on your own. But I think everything falls back to the individual, and you have to figure out for yourself what is best for me, like what works best for me, and how, like based on how I've studied and how I've succeeded in the past, what do I think I need? And that's where I'll keep it.
Thank you so much for sharing. Tori, did you want to share?
The only thing I wanted to say about studying for the MCAT, like Easy said, definitely know yourself, know your limitations, study early and often. And I just wanted to say that definitely the financial aspect plays heavily into that question, because can you afford these $2,000, $1,500 programs? And this is one thing that unfortunately keeps some of us out of even being competitive for these programs, because we couldn't even have the same advantage that that other people have when it comes to preparation for these exams. major exams that would have, a huge amount of influence when it comes to our applications. So definitely, if when Easy said, make sure you're ready, one thing I would say is consider your financial situation and prepare accordingly. Ask your school's diversity and inclusion office if they can help fund you. Find so many ways to try and cultivate funds to try and tackle not only your Mcat programs, your applications, and so on and so forth. That's all I really have to say about that.
Rahelia, you had a quick comment.
Yeah, so just something quick, when applying for these, a lot of these test prep companies may have scholarships that you don't know about. Like I applied for one with Princeton Review. It was so many years ago now, but just send an email to find out. It never hurts. They may have it and just not advertise it. Apply and then see what happens.
All right, thank you all. So the next question is from Kendall. Do you know how medical schools view students who attend post-bac programs versus those who take all the pre-med requirements while in undergrad? Let's start with, let's go to Zakari.
Okay. This is a harder question to ask because honestly, it varies from school to school as well as their deans of admissions and chair admissions. I will tell you, as someone that did a kind of a post-bac myself. Also, just to backtrack, for anyone that doesn't know, there are multiple types of post-bac. There are post-bac programs for career changers who need to get those courses that they didn't finish undergrad. There are post-bac programs for resume enhancers, those who like did kind of bad in undergrad, but they want to reinvent themselves and get a second chance at upper level science courses. There's also SMP special master's programs for people who just are missing that one thing, but they just want to prove themselves in a medical school environment and take class with medical school students. So it's like, I encourage you all to invest and look into all of these different options, especially if you're thinking about planning on pursuing a post-bac or SMP or a gap year after your education. But getting back to your question, Kendall, in recent news, some people actually do not frown upon actually post-bac. Ironically, the word traditional for people that come straight out of undergrad is becoming less and less the case, especially when it comes to minority or Black Latino students, because they understand like the different circumstances we have to overcome to catch up in a sense. So they're not really frowned upon. With that said, they do expect you to do a little bit more and come in a little bit more mature and a little bit more focused if you are taking this route. I understand like you actually have a better idea of your goals and take it a little bit more seriously. But they also, it's kind of also used to your benefit because they view you with a little bit more sense of maturity, capability, responsibility. So in a sense, it can't really hurt you. It can only help you if you do it in the right way. It's no longer frowned upon and seen as, oh, it's problematic. They're not going to be able to catch up. As well as our more extremely non-traditional students, it's still in a mixed bag because it also plays to their narrative, their role, like life circumstance, that let them know this is why I'm here for, this is why I want to do, this is why I get out of it. So it can only really help you depending on how you frame it and how you choose to illustrate yourself.
Okay, so we have time for one or two more questions. And the next one
is no longer frowned upon.
And the next one is from Ashlyn. How ideal would it be to obtain a master's before applying to medical school? So this is similar to the post-bac question we just had prior. I know Aldwin did one, so did you want to speak on it?
Yeah, I can speak on it. So I did 2 masters. I did one of my masters at Morehouse School of Medicine and then my other master's at Lincoln Memorial University. And I think it's great for me personally. I thought that it taught me a lot of what my study style is. Honestly, like I jog in place and say my notes out loud. You know what I mean? I learned how to collaborate and connect with other students, learning the team dynamics behind studying. I learned different fields of medicine. I learned about community health. I actually took anatomy class with medical students in one of my master's programs. So when I got actually into medical school, I was teaching my own classmates about the different nerve structures, anatomy, and all that. So I think it's important, not to say everybody has to do a master's program, but I feel like for me, it laid a great foundation for myself. You know, I graduated undergrad. I had a 3.0 science GPA and a 3.6 overall GPA. So I needed to prove to these med schools like, yo, I'm about this energy, like I'm about this lifestyle. So I think it says a lot about the fact that you're committed to medicine and that you can truly learn about yourself and be very successful within the dynamics of medical school by doing a master's program. But by all means, I didn't have the maturity to handle med school. If you told me like that I would get into med school right after undergrad, I would have failed out. But I'm just blessed to have done those 2 master's programs and had a network of support to continue being successful in regards to getting into medical school and then finishing it up. So that's what I would say.
I think am I on to answer this question? If we could go back. So I also did 2 master's programs prior to matriculating to medical school. The second one wasn't really planned out. It was kind of just the second year to my post-bac program and also considered a special master's program. One of the things that Zakari talked about. So I would say for me, like Aldwin, there's no way in the world that I was going to be ready for medical school straight out of undergrad, but that's going to be very specific to each person. And you have to dig deep and say, do I think I can handle this? Am I ready? Have you done the preparation? Do you need a gap year? Like really just take it within yourself. And I've had a lot of students that I've mentored that say, oh, I don't want to take a gap year. I don't want to do this. My friends have this, I have that. Stop comparing yourself and stop and look at yourself and go on your own pace and your own path, because there's not only one path to medicine. I mean, I can talk a little bit on mine straight out of undergrad. I did a lot of research in undergrad because, again, I was really research oriented. So I got a scholarship to go to Delaware State University. I did that. And then I continued on to my career in pediatric cancer research for several years. And then, I decided that wasn't really the path for me. And then I went on to do a post-bac program at Drexel. And that kind of spiraled into a second master's program in interdisciplinary health sciences, But I would say it was beneficial for me because when I got to the first year of medical school, and again, my post-bac program did include, like Aldwin said, classes with the first year medical students. So when I got to medical school, anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, all those courses were a breeze, whereas I did see people that came straight out of undergrad really struggling with their courses, and not to say that they didn't get through it, but I can say that just due to the amount of times I've been exposed to certain courses, by that time, if I don't know it, I don't know what's going on. So I really didn't struggle as much as some of my younger counterparts when it came to medical school, and because of my prior experience with my education.
Thank you. So we're going to have one more question for our webinar before we wrap up, and it is from Hannah, and I believe it reads, thank you for pulling that up. Generally, are MD PhD programs more involved in basic translational or clinical research? Zakari, would you mind answering this? And in addition to this question, would you mind answering how to apply to MD PhD programs in that process?
Okay, absolutely. For our MD PhDs more involved in basic translation or clinical, it ultimately depends. Because of course, MD PhD programs, the whole point of it is this benchside to bedside, like understanding the nuances and what leads to underlying causes of a disease and going into that decent introspection. So a bunch of them are more so basic or translational. As opposed to clinical research, you can also do that, but they will even advise you, like, you should probably pursue a master's of clinical research or a master's of biomedical research if you only focus on clinical research. And this is where it comes down to you have to actually investigate your individual goals and what you want to do. If you want to have a research lab, if you just want to be part of a collaboration, or if you just want to do research in your spare time, these are all different questions. And you kind of tailor which type of MD PhD program you specify, as well as like which type of MD PhD do you pursue. Because just because you're in the PhD program, you're more than welcome to, 9 times out of 10, you're more than welcome to pursue any research on campus or PI. And some of them do very translational on one spectrum or very clinical on another spectrum. Some are heavily molecular, some are heavily behavioral. There is no like pigeonhole or no correct roadmap. It kind of comes to understand of what you want to do and what you want to get out of it, as well as like how you want to tailor your experience. And finally, how to get into or the application process for MD PhD programs This is another hard question, but I'll try to make it streamlined. There are mainly two type of MD PhD programs. Those are MSTP, which are usually funded by the NIH. They're very much streamlined. They're a little bit more competitive because they are fully funded between your medical school and your PhD program. But honestly, it's usually just one application. You go into your MCAT, you click the box that says MD only or MD PhD if that school has one, and you usually just go from there. And after you go through a certain amount of times, in your second year, they will actually open up about your medical school application as well as your PhD application. And that is the more streamlined method. Once you get accepted to one, you usually get accepted to both, and it goes from there. And the interviews are usually MMI, multiple interviews. You talk to multiple people. It's like medical school speed dating with admission boards. They each ask you a quick question. You have 5 minutes to respond. You go on to the next. As well as they also let you meet other PIs on campus, so you could kind of get the experience of like the culture or the type of science, and do I see myself here, and is it underlined with what I want to do? And then of course there's regular MD PhD, where it's like you could apply both separately, apply for the MD at the school, then ask for a gap year or a gap time, and then apply to their PhD program. These are a little bit less structured to kind of do it yourself, and the funding is not guaranteed. And then there are other MD PhD programs at each institution that goes on their own scheme, their own path. Some are 2-3-2, some are complete PhD first, complete then your MD. Some are translation from PhD to MD. These are all different questions. I encourage you to reach out to me individually. I could better articulate what I'm trying to say, but we're just trying to end on time. So yeah, definitely. Yeah. Right. Someone did have a quick plug for the MD PhD though.
Yeah, so the NIH is also a great place to go do your PhD. You could apply for an MD PhD and then do your dissertation work at the NIH. So just a quick plug, a lot of people don't know about it, but you can basically do a lot of basic translational and clinical research over there for your PhD program. And they're called GPP, like NIH GPP programs.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, for taking time out to, reach back and talk to the pre-medical students, all our viewers, and post-bac students. So now we want to take this time to ask you all for one quick, short piece of advice for all of our viewers in regards to applying or just medical school journey. We're going to start with Aldwin and just go in order like we did with the intros.
I would say just be very proactive with this process. Believe in yourself, believe in the journey that you have, and regardless of the outcome, know that you have to commit and put every resource in to get into medical school, whether that's calling medical schools, whether that's emailing, whether that's showing up to the front door. You got to grind, you got to hustle. This is your dream. This is what you believe in. And so whatever is necessary to get there, you'll definitely do that, and you'll be in a position to be a clinician and change people's lives and impact them in such a powerful way. And it's a beautiful field to be part of. So I believe in each and every one of you guys. So continue to persevere and believe in the process, and you'll get to where you'll be.
So in addition to what Aldwin has said, I would say be persistent, but at the same time, relax. This journey is a marathon. In as much as you fight to get into med school, you're going to keep fighting in med school and keep fighting to get into residency. So make sure you really build really good coping skills during this time. Learn how to take care of yourself and just keep leaning into that. Lean into your network, lean into your resources, the people who love you, and that will carry you a really long way for the rest of your life.
My last piece of advice is advocate for yourself. This is one thing that I really wish that I had done, in my younger years. And it's something that I constantly encourage when I'm mentoring students for the future. You guys are paying for your education upwards of what, I don't remember what undergrad was, but it's something in the 20, 30 thousands of dollars. You need to make sure that you're reaching out to all the resources that you possibly can to advocate for yourself and to make sure that you're really accessing everything that you can to, fuel your future success. So continue to advocate for yourself, really. And like Aldwin said, always, always, always just keep that, encouragement and things like that. So yeah, That's all.
Easy can go next.
Oh, so I think this whole process, the medical school process, is an individualized process. So I'm just going to leave you all with a general advice. I think this applies both to going to medical school, the lifelong journey, learning in medicine, and outside of medicine as well. So what I have to say is success is not measured by the destination, but by the journey. So focus on your own unique journey. Be your original self, and in due time, you will reach your destination.
And Zakari, you're closing this out. Well, last piece of advice.
Okay. Pretty much the words that always got me through medical school, as well as in my application process, that I took with me are the 3 Ps: patience, persistence, and positivity. And then just more so understanding, which all my colleagues reiterated, the quote, reiterated, it's kind of a journey or process. It's meant to mold you, develop you, and help you grow as a person that can handle any circumstance that comes from this sport. You're supposed to be thankful for the good times and the bad times, because at the end of the day, there's something to learn from every circumstance or every interaction. That even though it didn't work out this time, it's like you learn something, you gain from it, and that's progress every sense of the word. And you can pay it forward and become better the next time you come across. And the last thing I want to leave you before you hear from us is always pay it forward. Like, take this information you gave from us and pass it. You have an obligation to pass it on to the next generation after you, and to make a way for people that don't have to go through the same circumstance or the same pitfalls that you have. Make it easier for those come after us, because that's the only way that we're gonna catch up to and decrease the discrepancy in the field. So just keep that in mind. Like, you, as a future doctor, future physician, you all have this obligation to pay back.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate all of you all for paying back by attending this webinar and giving so much good advice. We have so many questions that we couldn't get to, but for all of our viewers, I did see Tori share the panelists' contact information in the chat box. So you can look in the chat box and contact everybody that you see on your screen. And I want to mention that this was just the first part of our webinar about application on our application series. The second part will be in September, and it will be over online interviewing, because that is new to a lot of us. So please look out for that on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We'll be tweeting the date and the time for that webinar. In addition, we will have a competitive applicant webinar series going on later in the year as well. That one's more geared to our undergraduate members, and we will have additional resources for our post-bac and master and graduate level MAPS members. So thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, everybody working in the background. Today was amazing, and we hope to see you all again. Thank you so much.